Everybody around you sees the same thing. You clock in, clock out, return home, maybe grab dinner, maybe scroll a bit before bed. To them, you look ordinary, but quietly, you're engineering something much bigger, an empire that no one will see until it's already too late to compete. I want to share something with you today that changed everything for me, something our ancestors understood deeply, something written in the Talmud over 1500 years ago, something that's helped Jewish families build wealth quietly, generation after generation. These aren't secrets because they're hidden. They're secrets because most people never pause long enough to listen. Let me tell you about Sarah. She was a 63-year-old woman who came to me 3 years ago, broken, exhausted. She'd worked her entire life as a nurse, raised 3 children alone, and had exactly $7,000 in her savings account. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Rabbi, is it too late for me?" I'll tell you what I told her that day, and I'll tell you what happened after she applied these 9 ancient Jewish principles. But first, you need to understand something fundamental. The greatest power is the one no one suspects. Our sages understood this. They taught us to build in silence, to grow in humility, and to let our results speak only when the time is right. In Pirkei Avot, we learn who is rich, one who is satisfied with his portion. But this doesn't mean settling for poverty. It means understanding that true wealth flows from wisdom, not from display. Unlike some religious traditions that have viewed poverty as virtuous, Judaism has always seen poverty as something to overcome, not to embrace. The Talmud teaches us that poverty is not noble. It's an obstacle to serving God fully, to supporting family, to contributing to community. We are meant to prosper. We are meant to build. We are meant to create abundance. But we are also meant to do it with wisdom, with ethics, and with humility. So let me share with you the first rule of building wealth the Jewish way. It's called Anavah, humility in action. Master the low profile. Appear modest, even average. Our tradition teaches us that the righteous walk humbly. Why? Because every time you announce your progress, you awaken envy. And envy, my friend, attracts opposition. I learned this from my grandfather. He survived the camps, came to America with nothing, and by the time he passed, he owned 17 properties across 3 states. But you'd never know it by looking at him. He drove a 12-year-old Honda. He wore the same 3 suits. He lived in a modest 2-bedroom home. When people asked him how he was doing, he'd smile and say, "Baruch Hashem, we have enough." That was all. He understood that the man who spends to impress loses command. The man who saves to invest becomes untouchable. I remember the day I asked him why he lived so simply when he could afford so much more. I was young, maybe 24, and I couldn't understand it. He took me into his small kitchen, made us tea, and told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "Joseph, when people see you driving a fancy car, they don't think you're successful. They think you're foolish. They wonder how much debt you're carrying. They assume you're trying to prove something. But when they see you living modestly while your business grows, they respect you, they trust you, they want to do business with you." He was right. Throughout my life, I've watched flashy people fail and humble people succeed. Not because humility itself creates wealth, but because it creates the conditions for wealth to grow. When you're not spending on status, you have capital to invest. When you're not broadcasting your success, you avoid the envy that brings opposition. When you appear average, people underestimate you, and that gives you room to maneuver, to build, to expand without interference. Now here's where it gets practical. The Talmud, in Bava Metzia 42a, gives us the second rule. It's called the rule of thirds, diversification done right. Listen carefully to these ancient words. A person should always divide his money into 3, 1/3 in land, 1/3 in merchandise, and 1/3 kept in reserve. This isn't just wisdom. This is a battle-tested strategy that's protected Jewish wealth for centuries. 1/3 in stability, real estate, land, something tangible that holds value. 1/3 in growth, business, investments, opportunities that multiply while you sleep. And 1/3 in liquidity, cash reserves, resources you can access immediately when crisis comes. Because crisis always comes. Think about how revolutionary this advice was 1,500 years ago. The rabbis understood diversification long before modern portfolio theory existed. They understood that putting all your resources in one place was dangerous. A fire could destroy your business. A drought could ruin your crops. A political upheaval could confiscate your property. But if your wealth was spread across 3 distinct categories, you could survive any single catastrophe. Sarah, the woman I mentioned earlier, she took her $7,000 and followed this ancient formula. She put $2,000 into a REIT, that's modern-day land. She invested $2,000 into a diversified index fund, her merchandise, and she kept $3,000 in an emergency fund. That was 3 years ago. Today, that initial investment has grown to $19,000. But more importantly, Sarah learned something that no amount of money can buy. She learned that she wasn't helpless. She learned that it's never too late to start. But let me tell you what happened next, because this is where the real transformation occurred. 6 months after Sarah started investing, her car broke down. Major transmission failure. The repair quote was $2,800. The old Sarah would have panicked. She would have put it on a credit card. She would have gone into debt. But the new Sarah? She had her emergency fund, she paid cash, she didn't touch her investments, and she kept moving forward. That's when she understood what our sages meant. The reserve, that third portion kept in cash, isn't just sitting there, it's working. It's protecting your other investments from being liquidated at the wrong time. It's giving you peace of mind. It's allowing you to weather storms without derailing your long-term plans. This is wisdom that survives millennia, because it works in every economic condition, in every country, in every generation. Let me give you the third rule, and this one might surprise you. It's called hishtadlut, the balance between effort and trust. In Jewish thought, we believe that wealth comes from God, but we must do our part. As it says in Deuteronomy 8:18, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power to acquire wealth." This means 2 things. First, you must act. You must plan. You must work with diligence and wisdom. But second, you must release the outcome. You must trust that if you do your part with integrity, you will be provided for. This prevents 2 deadly mistakes: the paralysis of overthinking and the recklessness of gambling. I see both extremes in my community constantly. On one side, there are people who are so afraid of making the wrong financial decision that they make no decision at all. Their money sits in a checking account earning nothing, losing value to inflation every single year. They're waiting for the perfect opportunity, the perfect moment, the perfect guarantee. But perfection never comes. And while they wait, time, their most valuable asset, disappears. On the other side, there are people who throw money at every shiny opportunity. Cryptocurrency today, day trading tomorrow, some multi-level marketing scheme next week. They're not investing, they're gambling. They're hoping for a miracle instead of building a system. And they always lose because they've confused speculation with strategy. Hishtadlut is the middle path. It says, do your homework, make informed decisions, take calculated risks, and then trust the process. Don't obsess over every market fluctuation. Don't panic when there's a downturn. Don't abandon your plan because someone on social media claims they made a fortune doing the opposite. Stay the course. Do your part. Trust God for the outcome. Proverbs 21:5 warns us, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit, but hasty action leads to poverty." A Torah-guided investor is not a gambler. They are a planner. They conduct due diligence. They diversify. They resist the urge to chase fads or speculate impulsively. I remember David, a young man in his 30s who worked in construction. He heard about cryptocurrency and wanted to put his entire life savings into it. When he told me, I asked him a simple question. Have you done the math? Have you studied the market? Have you considered the risk? He admitted he hadn't. He just saw others getting rich and wanted the same. I shared with him this principle of hishtadlut. Do your homework. Invest wisely. Don't gamble with your family's future. David ended up investing only 10% of his savings into crypto while diversifying the rest according to the rule of thirds. When the market crashed a year later, he lost that 10%. But he still had 90% growing steadily. Today he thanks me with tears in his eyes. He almost lost everything because he forgot this ancient truth: responsible effort, thoughtful action, and trust in divine timing. Now let's talk about the 4th rule, and this one might be the most counterintuitive of all. It's called ma'aser, giving away 10%. In Deuteronomy 14:22-29, the Torah commands us to set aside 1/10 of our income and give it away. Not as a loss, but as a spiritual investment. I know what you're thinking. "Rabbi, I barely have enough for myself. How can I give 10% away?" Let me tell you something that defies logic but proves true every single time. When you give with the right heart, when you give to help others genuinely, something shifts. Opportunities appear, doors open. Blessings flow in ways you cannot engineer on your own. The Talmud makes it clear that giving leads to actual, tangible wealth. Maimonides, one of the greatest Jewish philosophers, stated, "Anyone who gives tzedakah will never be poor, and anyone who gives will never lack resources." This perspective is radically different from conventional financial wisdom, which tells you to hoard and invest before giving. Jewish wisdom suggests the opposite: give first, and financial success will follow. I've tested this personally for 43 years. In my 20s, when I was barely scraping by, I started giving 10% of every paycheck to people in need, not to institutions, not for recognition, but to single mothers who couldn't pay rent, to elderly people who needed medicine, to young students who couldn't afford books. And I watched, year after year, as my income grew in ways I could never have predicted. Let me tell you about one specific instance. I was 26 years old, working as a Hebrew school teacher, making barely enough to cover my rent and groceries. One day, a woman in our community approached me after services. Her name was Mrs. Goldstein, and she was crying. Her husband had just been diagnosed with cancer, and they couldn't afford the medications he needed. The cost was $300 a month. I went home that night and calculated my budget. After rent, utilities, food, and basic expenses, I had about $350 left each month. If I gave her $300, I'd have $50 for everything else. It seemed impossible, but I remembered Ma'aseh. I remembered the promise that giving creates abundance. So I wrote her a check for $300 and told her I'd do it every month for as long as she needed. 2 weeks later, I received a phone call. A family in the community needed a private tutor for their son, who was struggling with his bar mitzvah preparation. They offered me $500 a month. I didn't advertise. I didn't ask for it. The opportunity just appeared. Within 6 months, I had 3 additional tutoring clients. My income doubled, and I never missed a payment to Mrs. Goldstein. This isn't magic. This is spiritual law. When you demonstrate that you can be trusted with resources, when you show that your heart is generous and not greedy, you become a channel for greater abundance. Ma'aseh is not about losing 10%. It's about gaining access to the 90% that God multiplies. The story of Moses Montefiore illustrates this perfectly. He was a 19th century Jewish philanthropist who became one of the wealthiest men in England. He served as Sheriff of London and used his vast fortune to fund Jewish communities across Europe and the Middle East. He funded hospitals, schools, and the first neighborhood outside the old city walls of Jerusalem. And the more he gave, the more his wealth grew. He understood that generosity doesn't diminish prosperity, it creates it. The 5th rule is something our people learned through centuries of persecution and survival. It's called multiple streams. Never depend on one source alone. Throughout history, Jewish merchants and traders understood that a single income stream was a single point of failure, so they built networks, side businesses, rental properties, teaching opportunities. The Talmud tells us to spread our portions to 7, even to 8, for we do not know what disaster may come. In modern terms, this means side hustles, passive income, consulting work, digital assets. Every additional stream of income is another fortress protecting your family. Think about our history. Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492, kicked out of England in 1290, forced out of countless cities and countries throughout the centuries. Those who survived financially were the ones who had diversified their income sources. They weren't just tailors, they also lent money. They weren't just merchants, they also owned property. They weren't just scholars, they also taught trades. This wasn't just smart business, this was survival strategy. Take Rebecca, a 48-year-old schoolteacher. Her salary was modest, but she started tutoring students on weekends. Then she created an online course teaching others her methods. Within 2 years, she had 3 income streams: her teaching salary, her tutoring income, and her course revenue. When the pandemic hit and schools closed, she wasn't devastated. She adapted. Her course exploded. Today, she earns more from her online teaching than she ever did in the classroom. But here's what most people miss about multiple income streams. It's not just about the money, it's about the psychological freedom. When you have only one source of income, you're afraid. You can't negotiate. You can't take risks. You can't speak truth to power because losing that one job means losing everything. But when you have 3, 4, 5 sources of income, you're free. You can walk away from situations that don't serve you. You can take calculated risks. You can build from a position of strength instead of desperation. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I worked for a synagogue that paid me well but treated me poorly. The board was dysfunctional. The president was abusive. The environment was toxic. But I stayed because I needed the salary. I had a mortgage, 2 children, and no other income. I was trapped. Then I started building side income. I began officiating weddings on weekends. I started teaching adult education classes at other synagogues. I took on counseling clients. Within 18 months, my side income equaled 40% of my synagogue salary. And suddenly, I wasn't afraid anymore. I could speak up. I could set boundaries. And eventually I could leave. I found a healthier community to serve, and my side businesses continued to grow. Today, I have 7 distinct income streams. And I sleep peacefully every night knowing that my family's security doesn't depend on any single source. The 6th rule is about structure and protection. In Jewish tradition, we have always understood the importance of boundaries, agreements, and clarity. This translates into modern finance as legal protection. LLCs, trusts, proper business entities. The wealthy don't keep everything under their name. They build structures that protect their assets from lawsuits, from taxes, from unforeseen disasters. When you buy real estate, form an LLC. When you start a business, separate your personal and business finances. These aren't complicated steps. They're simple acts of wisdom that protect what you've worked so hard to build. Let me tell you about Jacob, a man who owned 3 rental properties but held them all in his personal name. One day, a tenant sued him after slipping on ice. The lawsuit threatened not just the rental property, but his personal home, his savings, everything. He came to me devastated. I connected him with an attorney who helped him restructure everything properly. It cost him $3,000 up front, but it saved him from losing $300,000. This principle goes back to the Talmudic concept of making a fence around the Torah, creating boundaries that protect what's valuable. In financial terms, that fence is legal structure. It's insurance. It's estate planning. It's making sure that one mistake, one lawsuit, one unexpected event doesn't wipe out generations of accumulated wealth. I see too many people in my community who work hard, save diligently, invest wisely, but fail to protect what they've built. They think legal structures are only for the super wealthy. They think LLCs and trusts are too complicated or too expensive. But I tell them what my grandfather told me: an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Spending $3,000 today on proper structure could save you $300,000 tomorrow. The 7th rule is perhaps the most beautiful. It's called hidden giving, or tzedakah b'setah. The highest form of charity in Jewish tradition is giving anonymously, where neither the giver nor the receiver knows the other's identity. Why? Because when you give in secret, you protect both your humility and your power. You build moral authority without triggering envy. You strengthen your character without feeding your ego. The Talmud teaches that anonymous giving prevents shame for the recipient and arrogance for the giver. Maimonides outlined 8 levels of charity, with the highest being giving that enables the recipient to become self-sufficient without knowing who helped them. This isn't just about kindness. It's about strategic generosity. It's about building a network of goodwill without broadcasting your benevolence. It's about creating impact without seeking credit. I know a businessman who makes 7 figures annually. Every year, he anonymously pays the rent for 5 struggling families in our community. No one knows it's him, not even his own children. He tells me, "Rabbi, when I give in secret, I feel God's presence more than when anyone thanks me publicly." That's the power of hidden giving. It connects you to something greater than yourself, but there's also a practical dimension to this. When you give publicly, people expect more. They create dependency. They see you as a perpetual source of help. But when you give anonymously, you help without creating obligation. You empower without creating dependency. And you protect yourself from being overwhelmed by endless requests. I practice this myself. There are families in my community I've supported for years, paying medical bills, covering rent, funding education. They have no idea it's me. Sometimes I arrange for the money to come through a discretionary fund. Sometimes I have a third party deliver it. Sometimes I just leave an envelope at their door. The method doesn't matter. What matters is that they receive help without shame and I give without pride. The 8th rule is about your circle, who you surround yourself with. Pirkei Avot teaches, provide yourself with a teacher, acquire for yourself a friend and judge every person favorably. In financial terms, this means choosing allies who guard your ambition, who build instead of gossip, who measure success by growth, not by display. Your environment determines your trajectory more than your talent. If you surround yourself with complainers, you'll complain. If you surround yourself with consumers, you'll consume. If you surround yourself with builders, you'll build. It's that simple, and it's that difficult. I've watched countless people sabotage their financial progress by maintaining friendships with people who mocked their discipline, who ridiculed their frugality, who couldn't understand why they wouldn't join them in frivolous spending. Your circle must consist of people who respect your silence, who honor your goals, who understand that you're playing a different game, a longer, wiser game. When I started investing seriously in my 30s, I had friends who called me cheap, who laughed when I chose to brown bag lunch instead of eating out, who couldn't understand why I drove a used car when I could afford new. Over time, I distanced myself from those voices, and I found mentors, people who had already walked the path, who understood delayed gratification, who saw 20 years ahead instead of 20 minutes. One of those mentors was a man named Mr. Stein. He was 74 when I met him, a Holocaust survivor who had built a successful textile business. He took me under his wing and taught me things I never learned in school. He taught me about compound interest, about tax strategies, about real estate investing. But more importantly, he taught me about patience. I remember sitting in his office one day, frustrated because my investments weren't growing as fast as I wanted. He smiled and pulled out a chart showing his own investment history over 50 years. He pointed to a specific period, 1973 to 1974, when the market crashed and he lost 40% of his portfolio value. I didn't sell, he said. I kept investing, every month, every year, and look what happened. The chart showed exponential growth over the following decades. Wealth isn't built in a day, Joseph. It's built one quiet decision at a time. That conversation changed my life. It taught me that the people you learn from matter more than the strategies you employ, because strategies change with markets, but wisdom endures across generations. Surround yourself with people who have already achieved what you want to achieve. Learn from them, serve them, honor them, and watch how their wisdom transforms your trajectory. And now the 9th rule. This is the one that ties everything together. It's called Limud, continuous learning. In Jewish culture, education is the highest value. The Talmud says, an ignorant person cannot be truly pious. Why? Because wisdom precedes action. Knowledge precedes wealth. Jewish culture has always placed education at its core. From the earliest age, children are taught to read, to question, to study, to debate. This isn't just about religious knowledge. It's about developing a mindset of continuous growth. It's about understanding that learning is not a phase of life. It's a way of life. The greatest investors in the world, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Ray Dalio, they all read constantly. Buffett reads 500 pages a day. Why? Because knowledge compounds faster than money. Every book you read, every skill you learn, every principle you internalize becomes another layer of defense, another invisible wall protecting your empire. But here's what most people miss. They think learning is about accumulating information. It's not. It's about transforming behavior. You can read 100 books on personal finance, but if you don't change how you spend, save, and invest, you've learned nothing. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. Sarah, the woman who started with $7,000, she didn't just invest her money, she invested in learning. She read books on finance. She took free online courses. She asked questions. She grew not just in wealth, but in wisdom. And that wisdom is now something she's passing to her grandchildren. I require every person I mentor to read at least one book per month on finance, investing, or personal development. Not because I want them to become experts, but because I want them to develop the habit of learning. Because the person who stops learning stops growing, and the person who stops growing starts dying, financially, intellectually, spiritually. Let me tell you about Michael. He came to me 5 years ago, 32 years old, making a decent income as an accountant but feeling stuck. He asked me the same question so many people ask. Rabbi, what should I invest in? I told him, before you invest a single dollar, invest in yourself. Read these 5 books. Take this online course. Learn about asset allocation, about tax strategies, about long-term wealth building, then come back and we'll talk about where to put your money. He was frustrated. He wanted quick answers. He wanted me to just tell him what to do, but I refused. Because I knew that if I just gave him instructions, he'd follow them blindly, without understanding the principles, and when circumstances changed, he'd be lost again. But if he learned the principles himself, he could adapt to any situation. 6 months later, Michael came back. He'd read the books. He'd taken the courses. He understood diversification, risk management, and long-term thinking. We spent 2 hours discussing his specific situation, and he made informed decisions about his portfolio. Today, 5 years later, his net worth has grown by over $200,000. But more importantly, he's become a teacher himself. He mentors young professionals in his firm, passing on the wisdom he learned. That's the power of Limud. It doesn't just change you, it changes everyone you touch. Knowledge is the only asset that multiplies when you give it away. When I teach someone about investing, I don't lose that knowledge, I still have it. But now they have it too. And when they teach someone else, the impact grows exponentially. Let me be clear about something. These 9 rules, humility, diversification, balanced effort, giving, multiple streams, protection, hidden charity, wise relationships, and continuous learning, they're not quick fixes. They're not get-rich-quick schemes. They're principles that require patience, discipline, and faith. But here's what I've witnessed over and over again. When people apply these teachings sincerely, when they commit to building wealth quietly and ethically, something shifts, not just in their bank accounts, but in their character. They become people of substance, people of integrity, people who can be trusted with more because they've proven faithful with little. The Jewish approach to wealth is fundamentally different from the modern approach. Modern culture says, get rich quick, show off your success, accumulate for yourself, hoard your resources. Jewish wisdom says, build slowly, stay humble, diversify wisely, give generously. Modern culture sees wealth as an end. Jewish wisdom sees wealth as a means, a tool for supporting family, strengthening community, and serving God. I think about my grandfather often. He never saw himself as wealthy. He saw himself as a steward. He believed that everything he had was a gift from God, entrusted to him for a purpose, and that purpose was to provide for his family, to help his community, and to leave a legacy of values, not just valuables. Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. This isn't just about money, it's about teaching your children how to think about money, how to earn it ethically, how to manage it wisely, how to give it generously, how to protect it intelligently. When my grandfather passed away, we sat Shiva in his modest home. People came from all over, business partners, tenants, community members, people we'd never met. And they all told stories. Stories of how he'd given them their first job, stories of how he'd waived rent when times were hard, stories of how he'd invested in their businesses when banks wouldn't, stories of how he'd paid for their children's education. That's when I realized something profound. My grandfather had been wealthy, but his real fortune wasn't in his properties or his bank accounts. It was in the lives he'd touched. It was in the gratitude of hundreds of people whose trajectories he'd changed. That's what Proverbs means by leaving an inheritance to your children's children. It's not just financial assets. It's a legacy of generosity, of wisdom, of impact. When I look at Sarah today, I don't just see a woman whose investment portfolio has grown. I see a woman who has transformed. She walks differently. She speaks differently. She no longer asks, is it too late? She now mentors other women in our community who are starting their own financial journeys. She embodies the truth that wealth built on wisdom and humility multiplies in ways money alone never can. So let me ask you something. Where are you right now? Are you the person who looks ordinary on the outside while engineering something extraordinary on the inside? Or are you still broadcasting your every move, seeking validation, chasing applause? Are you practicing Anavah, walking humbly while building quietly? Have you implemented the rule of thirds, diversifying your assets according to ancient wisdom? Are you balancing hishtadlut, doing your part, while trusting God for the outcome? Are you giving ma'aseh, investing, spiritually even as you invest financially? Have you created multiple streams of income, spreading your risk across 7 or 8 portions? Have you protected your assets with proper structure and boundaries? Are you giving in secret, building moral authority without feeding ego? Have you chosen your circle carefully, surrounding yourself with people who guard your ambition? And are you committed to Limud, to learning continuously, to growing in wisdom as your wealth grows? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're invitations. Invitations to step into a way of life that sustained Jewish families through exile, persecution, economic collapse, and every imaginable hardship. These principles work not because they're clever, but because they're true. They align with spiritual laws that govern prosperity, character, and legacy. I want you to do something for me right now. Don't just listen to these words and move on. Take one principle, just one, and apply it this week. Maybe it's opening that investment account you've been putting off. Maybe it's giving away 10% of your next paycheck to someone in genuine need. Maybe it's having an honest conversation with a mentor about your financial goals. Whatever it is, take action. Because wealth built in silence begins with a single quiet step, and then another, and another. Until one day, years from now, you'll look back and realize that you've built something extraordinary. Not because you were lucky, but because you were wise. Not because you were flashy, but because you were faithful. The Talmud teaches us that the day is short, the work is great, and the master is insistent. We don't have unlimited time. We don't have endless opportunities. But we do have today. We do have this moment. We do have these 9 ancient rules that have stood the test of time. Let me share one more story before we finish. There's a man in my community named Aaron. He's 46 years old, works as a high school history teacher, married with 4 children. 3 years ago, he came to me feeling defeated. He said, "Rabbi, I'm doing everything right. I go to work, I provide for my family, but I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I have no savings, no investments, nothing. I feel like a failure." I asked him to show me his budget. We spent 2 hours going through every expense, and I showed him something he'd never noticed. He was spending $1,100 a month on things that added no value to his life. Subscription services he never used, restaurant meals he barely enjoyed, a car payment on a vehicle he didn't need, small luxuries that had become habits. I challenged him, for the next 6 months, cut these expenses. Live as if you make $1,100 less per month. Take that money and divide it according to the rule of thirds. Invest, save, give. Just 6 months. Let's see what happens. He was skeptical, but he committed. For 6 months, he and his wife made radical changes. They canceled subscriptions. They cooked at home. They sold the expensive car and bought a reliable used one. They gave away $360 a month to families in need. They invested $400 into index funds. They saved $340 in an emergency fund. At the end of 6 months, Aaron came back to see me, but he wasn't the same person. His entire demeanor had changed. He said, "Rabbi, something happened. In the 3rd month, I got offered a summer teaching position I didn't apply for. In the 4th month, my wife's small business suddenly took off. In the 5th month, we received an unexpected tax refund. It's like the universe started cooperating with us." I smiled. It's not the universe, Aaron. It's spiritual law. When you demonstrate that you can manage resources wisely, when you show that you're not controlled by consumption, when you prove that you can give even when it's difficult, opportunities appear. Not because you deserve them, but because you're ready for them. Today, 3 years later, Aaron has $47,000 in investments, a fully funded emergency fund, and he's teaching financial literacy to other teachers in his district. He transformed not because his income dramatically increased, but because his relationship with money fundamentally changed. That's what these 9 principles do. They don't just change your net worth, they change your mindset, they change your character, they change your legacy. Because wealth built on Jewish wisdom isn't just about accumulating assets. It's about becoming the kind of person who can be trusted with abundance. So I'll leave you with this. The greatest power is the one no one suspects. The deepest wealth is the kind no one sees. The truest legacy is the wisdom you pass on, not just the money you leave behind. Build your empire quietly. Walk humbly. Give generously. Learn constantly. And trust that the God who gives you the power to acquire wealth will bless the work of your hands. If this resonates with you, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment and tell me which of these 9 rules you're going to implement first. Are you starting with the rule of thirds? Are you committing to Ma'aser? Are you restructuring your circle? Whatever it is, share it. Because when we declare our intentions, when we make them public, we create accountability. And accountability transforms intention into action. And if you found value in this teaching, if something here shifted your perspective, then share this message with someone who needs it. Someone who's been told it's too late. Someone who thinks wealth building is only for the lucky or the privileged. Someone who needs to know that there's an ancient, proven path that doesn't require genius or luck, just wisdom, discipline, and faith. Remember Sarah. Remember David. Remember Rebecca. Remember Jacob. Remember Michael. Remember Aaron. They're not special. They're not outliers. They're ordinary people who applied extraordinary principles, and if they can do it, so can you. It's never too late. The day you start is the day your legacy begins. Baruch Hashem. May you be blessed in your coming and in your going. May your hands prosper in the work they do, and may you build wealth that serves not just you, but generations to come. Thank you for listening. Now go and build your empire in silence.